All right, what's going on? We're going to go on to 7-3 or 7.3, chapter 7.3. And we're talking about more of a mathy approach to chemicals. And basically we're dealing with percentages here. And percentages are really easy. All you got to do is you take however much part you're interested in and divide it by 100% or a whole amount of that stuff. Cool? So let's do the example problems and we'll just go straight into it and talk about percent composition. So say that we have 8.20 gram piece of magnesium and you combine it with a 5.40 gram piece of oxygen to form some compound. So what did I say? It was 8.20 grams of magnesium and 5.40 grams of oxygen. You combine those to form some kind of compound. By the way, this is 7-11, 710. Example 710. Okay, so check this out. It's pretty simple. How much is the whole? If I have 8.2 grams of magnesium and 5.40 grams of oxygen, how much total of some stuff do I have? You have a calculator in your hand, go for it. 13.6 grams of total.
Yeah.
How'd you get that?
Just add them.
You just add them. Exactly. So if I want to figure out the percent of magnesium in here, you just take, well, you take 8.20 grams of magnesium divided by, what did you say, 13 point what?
6.
13.6 grams of stuff, and you end up getting, what? 0.397? How many sig figs? What?
0.602.
0.602. How many sig figs should we include?
2 or 3?
3, because that's 3 and that's 3 sig figs. So it's 0.603.
Yeah.
But remember, don't just trust the number that comes out on your calculator. This is a percentage, so it's 60.3%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then for the oxygen, what'd you get for the oxygen? Do you know how to do it? You want me to write it down? Well, you did it already on your calculator.
Oh yeah.
Before I even got to it.
0.397.
Point what?
397.
So it's 39.7%? Yeah. That's it. That's it. Okay. You're like, oh, this is so hard. No, it's actually pretty straightforward. I mean, it makes sense, right? Yeah. Okay, let's try this one. Calculate the percent composition of propane. I like this problem. All right, this is 7-11. You ready? First of all, you need to know the chemical formula of propane. The chemical formula of propane, so 7-11, this is C3H8. Oh, oops, H8. Now I got a question for you before we start. Is propane going to be heavy on carbon or heavy on, is the percent of carbon going to be bigger or percent of hydrogen going to be bigger?
Percent of carbon's gonna be bigger.
Why?
Because no. Percent of hydrogen's gonna be bigger.
Why? See, I'm that punk teacher who's like, well, why do you think that? And even if you got the answer right, well, why do you think that?
Because there's 8 hydrogens, and it's more.
Fair enough, because there's 8 hydrogens and there are only 3 carbons. Let's figure out what the actual answer is. First, I need to consider this. Let's figure out what the molar mass is of this whole thing, of propane. Got it?
Yeah.
So carbon, what is carbon, the molar mass of carbon? And have you heard of carbon-12?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
carbon-12 dating or
Yeah, carbon-12 dating, it's kind of a popular thing, right? So, like, what do you think the molar mass of carbon... Like, I'm trying to say... I told you that, like, eventually you'll memorize these things. What's oxygen?
16.
16. You knew that without even getting it because I made you do 5 problems already that you said, oh, oxygen 16. Oh, I had to look it up again. Oxygen 16. You'll get the hang of this after a while. Okay? Carbon is 12.
Yeah.
And we need to multiply that whole darn thing by what?
Oh, shoot, 3.
By 3. And hydrogen is what?
1.
1. And we need to multiply that thing by 8.
Yep.
So over here I have 36, and over here I have 8. 36 plus 8 is equal to, 44? Am I right? Yeah, 44 grams per mole. For every 1 mole of C3H8, there's 44 grams. Cool?
Yeah.
That's how we do the molar mass thing. Now, of that 44 grams, how many grams is carbon? Percent of carbon. 36 of that 44 grams of propane is actually carbon. And that gives you a percentage of what?
0.81 or 81.8%.
81.8, okay. By the way, this is carbon-12 is 12.0, and I think hydrogen is 1.00.
8.
Okay, so I guess it's 1.01. So technically, we probably should do this. This is actually 8.08, and this is 36.0. And when we add these together, this becomes. You see what I'm doing here is I'm making sure I keep track of my significant figures.
Yeah.
Grams per mole. Okay, what is 36 divided by 44.08?
Point or 18.3%.
18.3?
Oh, I thought you were doing the next one. 18. That's the same thing.
81.8?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, good. 3 sig fix. That's the percentage of carbon. And what's the percentage of hydrogen?
18.3.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was 8.08 divided by 44.08. And you end up getting 18.3. Okay. So I originally asked you which one had the greater number of, what took up the higher percentage, and you said hydrogen. And you're wrong. Hydrogen's only 18% of it, and carbon's 81% of it. Even though carbon has 3 molecules and hydrogen has 8, carbon is so much heavier per mole than hydrogen is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why it takes up a greater percentage. Now, 712 is a pretty cool problem. I kind of want to go into that one real quick. I'm just going to leave that up there. But they say, okay, say that we have 82 grams. 82, this is 712. Say that we have 82.0 grams of C3H8. How many grams of carbon do we have? Okay, check this out. I'm going to start off with 82.0 grams of C3H8. I'm going to multiply this by some fraction. If I reference the previous problem, if I had 100 grams of propane, how many grams of carbon would I have? If I had 100 grams.
You have 82%.
82 grams. I would have 81.8 grams.
Oh.
If I had, right, like a percent is how much of of 100 it is, right? So if I had 100 grams, I'd have 81 grams of this and 18.3 grams of this. Does that make sense? So that's a conversion factor. That's saying 100 grams of C3H8 is going to give me 81.8 grams of just the carbon, or C3, I guess. Cool?
Yeah.
So, look, as far as the units go, this cancels out with this, and I'm left with grams of carbon. So, what is 82.0 times 81.8 divided by 100?
Uh, 67.07.1.
67.1, because 3 sig figs, grams of carbon. Does that make sense? That's the total amount of carbon that I have. And is that the answer that I got and they got and whatever? Yep, 67.1. Cool. We cool with that?
Yeah.
Alright.